The NFL draft is a time of great excitement for football fans. Diehard fans tune in every year to the draft to see who their team will select to be the next face of the team. It is truly an exciting moment for all involved, as players hope to find their forever home. Management hopes to make their team better, and fans hope to have a new player's jersey to wear for years to come. However, just months later, like clockwork, some fans can feel their happiness turn into anguish. While some teams are left elated, it always feels like more are left disappointed in their rookies that their team picked. Just this year, the Carolinas rejoiced on draft night for their savior at QB, Bryce Young. Now the pick has come under fire as Panthers fans watched a player picked one spot later perform immensely better than their pick. At the end of the day, the NFL draft is a complete crapshoot. NFL teams invest multi millions of dollars towards scouting departments, analytics programs, and more, all for the draft to always end up being more similar to closing your eyes and throwing a dart at a dartboard. Some college players are great in college, they fail to succeed in the NFL. Others, who were just above middle of the pack in college, take the NFL by storm. While the NFL draft is undoubtedly chaotic with a beautiful touch of randomness, the 2022 NFL draft took it up a notch. In 2022, 15 University of Georgia players were selected, an all time record. Furthermore, if you are a Peach State fan, the Falcons had a top 10 pick. And if you aren't, there was plenty of craziness as the first round was relatively disappointing, but later rounds offered a ton of gems. Almost every team wishes they could redo the 2022 NFL draft. And while that is not possible, we can always predict what it would look like now. There are a few caveats to my personal 2022 NFL redraft. The first is that I used knowledge from the modern day and applied it to the past. In essence, I am evaluating the players as they are today, obviously, but ignoring what has happened in terms of roster building since the day of the 2022 National Football League draft. For example, if a team takes a corner in this draft but has plenty of corner depth today, they likely did not at the original time of the pick. Secondly, I have manipulated the board to my liking. One of the most chaotic things about the 2022 draft was the number of trades we saw in the first round. I kept most of the trades and draft order, but sometimes I undid trades or made others. Don't worry, the board is recognizable. It has just changed slightly. Finally, there is no correct redraft. I did a mix of what I think is best, meaning I incorporated my own bias, but also what I believe teams see and what they would do. With all that context and hullabaloo out of the way, let's jump right into the 2022 NFL redraft. For this 2022 NFL redraft, we'll go four picks at a time. Starting off, we have the first four, and the number one overall repick is Sauce Gardner. This isn't surprising to anyone. He was the best corner in the NFL as a rookie and has remained top five in his sophomore year. He's been absolutely excellent in the Jaguars' switch from Trayvon Walker, who has really been a disappointment, to a guy that has phenomenal upside and is already one of the best corners in the league. They still need corner to this day. While they have Tyson Campbell, they could use more, especially an outside corner like Gardner. And I'm sure since we're doing four picks at a time, your eyes drifted to this one. Deron Bland to the Lions at two. Controversial, I know, but he's been a top three corner this year. He was an absolute ball hawk. We obviously know all about his interceptions and pick sixes, but he graded extremely well as well. It wasn't like he was just getting picks, he was excellent in coverage. The Lions' secondary is also so bad. I know their defensive line isn't anything really great outside of Aiden Hutchinson, but Deron Bland could be a game changer for a Lions defense that is truly needing some help, especially on the back end. And Hutchinson only falls one pick. The reason I have him falling is more for his mental mistakes. While he's already proven to be dominant, he loses contain a lot of the times, allowing scrambling quarterbacks to escape, and that's led to a lot of first downs on fourth downs where the Lions could have gotten stops. I think Bland is just more impactful for the Lions, so Hutchinson just falls one pick to the Texans. Here, they get an edge rusher that they desperately need. They've had a couple picking up Will Anderson, but remember, according to this rules, we don't go back to that. So Hutchinson wouldn't be the edge rusher they've always wanted. And finally, last of the four, Garrett Wilson falls to the Jets. The Jets needed a big time receiver in this draft. They took him at 10 for a reason. And while this is high, he still deserves this pick, and the Jets still desperately needed him. So this makes about sense for what we know now. Moving on to the next four, it's Tyler Smith to the Giants at 5. Picks 5 through 8 features the Giants twice, and they take Smith first. He's become the best left guard in the league with the Cowboys. I don't think the Giants could replicate that, as I think the Cowboys gave him some extra coaching that really helped him succeed, especially when he moved from left tackle to left guard. But the Giants have to try in this case. If they're just getting the player he already is, he's extremely great. He's been one of the best left guards, and this would surely help their offensive line. And of course, it's the biggest riser in the draft. You have to remember rule number one. Assuming Carolina never gets to Bryce Young, Purdy is the pick here. While many people are down on Purdy, it is not often you have a bona fide top 12 QB on a draft board. And the Panthers, in my opinion, are lucky he fell this far. It's debatable, but I think he would really help them now and would have been a very good pick at the time, as he jumps 256 picks. Now, back to the Giants. Kyle Hamilton. The Giants need help on the back end. While they desperately also needed an edge rusher in Kayvon Thibodeau, they pass here, as I don't believe he's really worth that pick. And of course, he's struggled a bit on the Giants. He could use a change of scenery. No one else on the board is worth it more than Hamilton is here. While it's crazy to take a safety in the top 10 nowadays, Hamilton's presence in the box and in the slot is well worth it here for a Giants team that needs him. Then, Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't fall much, just 3 picks. He doesn't end up with the Giants at 5 or at 7. And while he's, in my opinion, not worthy of the 8th overall pick, he had a great sophomore year with 11.5 sacks. Many of them were cleanup, and his talent hasn't exactly shined through to the part we thought it would. But the Falcons are in no position to pass up a pass rusher of his potential. They've desperately needed one for many years. They get a guy coming off a double digit sack season who has room to improve. On to the next four. It's always hard to evaluate linemen, but Bernard Raymond has been one of the best tackles in the NFL. While I do have him over Tyler Smith, in terms of tackles, Smith has been one of the best left guards in the league, so that's why I have him going before. Now Raymond gets his chance on the Seahawks, who originally tried to grab their left tackle of the future with Charles Cross. Now they get a better one, and that helps him jump up 68 picks, a large jump. Moving on to the double digits, Derek Stingley Jr. goes here to the Jets. Stingley has had trouble staying on the field with injuries, but his talent is undeniable. Of course, the Jets can't get Sauce Gardner, and they already grabbed their wide receiver. So they have to go grab a corner, in my opinion, as that category was extremely lacking. Like Thibodeau, his talent is too high to pass on, and when he's been on the field, he's been great. So the Jets grab their corner of the future. Moving on, Olave is the first player in this redraft to go where they originally went. Pick, team, and all. He was the third wide receiver off the board in 2022, but he's proven himself. And while I'm a Falcons fan, he's been better than Drake London. So in this redraft, he's the second wide receiver off the board to a Saints team that needed one. And while you can argue they needed something else here, I think Olave is a good pick. Now, here, pick 12. Dirty Dozen. Here, the Lions traded up with their rivals, Vikings. As I mentioned, there'll be some board movement here, and we eliminate the Lions trade. So the Vikings stick and pick, and they pick Trent McDuffie. Now, I'm not sure Trent McDuffie is the fourth best corner in the class. Call it recency bias due to the Super Bowl. But he has become a heck of a player. Originally, the Vikings, of course, traded this pick, but Vikings have always had immense trouble getting quality defensive backs, and they can get one here and stick and pick. I think Trent McDuffie offers them a lot of value as he can play safety, slot, outside corner. He's truly a do it all. So they take him over some maybe other corners that are better because of his value there. Moving on to the midpoint of the first round. Pick 13, Kyler Gordon. We just talked about corners that I think might be better than McDuffie, and Gordon is one of them. He's carved himself out a quality role into the category of best cornerback in the league. Don't trust me? I'm not exaggerating. He's been great in the slot and more than serviceable on the outside. He truly does have an argument over McDuffie. And while I think McDuffie has the name value, Gordon has been extremely good at his job. However, he can't really play that safety role, and therefore I have McDuffie sneaking over him and Gordon falling to the Texans, again, who originally took a corner, but now get a different one as Derek Stingley is off the board. Here, pick 14, this might be a little early for Tyler Linderbaum. I got a lot of flack when I did a 2021 redraft and had Creed Humphrey as the 14th pick because he's a center. Centers don't have a lot of value. However, Linderbaum has been excellent, just like Creed Humphrey. They did a great job, did the Ravens, in picking their center of the future in Linderbaum. They've always done a great job picking interior linemen. And in my redraft, I don't think Linderbaum would be there at 24 or 25 or 26, wherever the Ravens would have thought. So they take him where they originally grabbed Hamilton, who, of course, is now off the board. At pick 15, it's Trayvon Walker. Eagles love their aggressive, physical, good trait D lineman. The original number one pick falls. He falls heavy, 14 picks. But the Eagles see the talent and size and elect to go with him over the original pick, Jordan Davis, who is one of a quite bunch of few Bulldogs who have disappointed so far. Truly, I don't know if Trayvon Walker deserves this spot, but I think the Eagles would like him and see the potential. Then it's another man who got passed up by his original team earlier, Charles Cross. He's had some injury problems, and even when he's been on the field, he's been middle of the pack. However, his flashes out of college and in the NFL show that he can be very, very good in pass pro, one of the top in the league. For this reason, he goes to the Commanders, who had one of the worst pass protection units in the NFL. Because of that, it feels like a match made in heaven, and we'll see how it works out, at least in our minds. While we are still in the middle of the first round, we have officially moved past the halfway point. And to lead us off at pick 17, it's Devontae Wyatt. Wyatt is one of the only Bulldog risers for this entire draft. He has silently killed in the league, being better than former counterpart Davis. 7.5 sacks last year, huge from the inside. He's truly been good and hasn't gotten enough respect. Then moving on, it's Drake London. Again, this might be a little early for him, but the Titans got this pick from the Eagles by trading AJ Brown away. They tried to replace Brown with Traylon Burks, which was a horrible, no good, very bad decision. Now they can get a better wide receiver who has fallen in the draft, but has a similar build to Brown and could just maybe reach that ceiling on a better play calling team than the Falcons. Think he's a good pick for the Titans here. Now at 19, this is where we get a little bit wild. Jack Jones was up there with Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen as a rookie. He was very, very good and did so quietly on a Patriots team. Then he had some problems off the field, leading to his release, and he ended up bouncing back this year with the Raiders. He had that all time moment of getting a pick six and then stealing the ball back from a Chiefs fan. He's a risky pick, but the talent is too good for the Saints to pass up, especially with, at this time, they desperately needed a corner. Moving on to pick 20, it's Zach Tom. I wouldn't be surprised if you had never heard of Zach Tom, but Tom has cemented himself as one of the best tackles in the league. Honestly, he could be much higher than this. He is right now better than Charles Cross. However, I have Charles Cross's upside as better than Tom's, the reason he falls to pick 20. I wouldn't hate if you had him higher. At the time, the Steelers needed any and all O line help, and he slots in perfectly. Interestingly enough, Wyatt and Tom are both risers who were originally picked by the Packers. Wyatt rose 11 picks, but of course, Zach Tom, a late round pick, rose 120. The Steelers would love to have him here. Moving on to the 20s, Boye Mafe leads us off at pick 21. This was, in my opinion, the hardest pick of the redraft. He's a hard player to evaluate, but 9 sacks this year for the Seahawks And the Bengals needing a true edge next to Trey Hendrickson has him living it up in Ohio. He gets taken to the Bengals a little bit earlier than the second round spot he slotted into originally. Then another edge rusher right off the board after him, Jermaine Johnson. Packers needed D line help. I'm sure they would love Devontae Wyatt here, but with him gone, it's next man up. Jermaine helps on the outside. 7.5 sacks for the Jets this year has him slightly rise to a desperate team. While I'm not sure he's the next best edge rusher off the board, he's been good when he's been on the field and has shown improvement from his rookie year. At 23, this is the easiest pick for me of the draft. The Bills took James Cook later in the draft, but here they just get a better version of Cook. Simple, easy, that's all to it. And at 24 is Braxton Jones. This one was hard. Cowboys originally took Smith, but with him all the way off the board at 5, they are looking for an O lineman. Braxton Jones can play tackle, the spot they wanted Smith to originally play. And Jones becomes a huge riser. He's been one of the few bright spots on that Bears O line as he's locked down his side. He's been really good and it hasn't been talked about, much like Zach Tom and other O linemen. But that wraps up the first 24. Moving on to the very back end, we start with Tariq Woolen. If we had done this redraft a year ago, right after the rookie season, Woolen would have been sitting top 5. However, his sophomore slump pushes him down. He's still a great corner with great physical abilities, but I can't put him over the other corners we've listed so far, especially with that previously mentioned slump. Then moving on to George Karlaftis. Again, call it Super Bowl bias, but Karlaftis looked good down the stretch. While he had more sacks at 10.5 than Mafe and Johnson, I think a lot of it can be attributed to Chris Jones. Either way, he rises to where the Jets originally took Johnson. So, kind of like fitting in a puzzle piece when one's already gone. Then it's the only so called other perfect pick. Lloyd has been solid at linebacker, and the Jaguars desperately needed one. He sticks to his spot and his team. Then at 28, the Packers get their Devontae Wyatt replacement. Davis switches roles with his former teammate. So far in the NFL, he's been disappointing, but he can still be a pass wrecker on the inside. He also stops the run well. So we'll see if in our brain space that the Packers could utilize him. I think it's a good fit here as we move on to the last 4. Remember when I said personal bias comes in? Well, Watson probably doesn't deserve to be elevated to a first round pick. But man, would seeing him on the Chiefs be fun. I think they would utilize him well, his size, his speed. It's a match in heaven. Then it's Pickett. This is the only huge change from the original board. Here, the Falcons trade up and grab a quarterback. Now, I'm not a fan of Pickett, and I have much doubt in the future on if he'll do well. But I have no doubt in a redraft that some team would hop into the first round to get 5 years of cheap control on him. Here, it's the Falcons, who still to this day need a quarterback. Now, just like Watson, I don't think that George Pickens deserves to climb out of that second round. He probably doesn't deserve it, but he has more talent than Watson. And despite the off field issues being rough, if one team was to iron him out, it'd be the Patriots, who need that wide receiver talent. And last pick is Houston. James Houston might not be known by many. It's a crazy pick, I know. But since the Lions didn't trade up to 12, they keep 32. They take Houston, who they originally got a whopping 185 picks later. Houston showed out in limited snaps as a rookie. Before he could get really going this year, he got a serious injury and was placed on IR. I think his talent and what he's shown with the Lions has him sneak in here at 32, although that's one of the crazier picks of the draft. Thoughts? This draft is a crazy one to redraft. The diamonds in the rough were numerous in this draft, creating a lot of upward movement. But with upward movement comes downward movement, as a lot of teams are left disappointed with how their first rounders have turned out. On the other hand, the Packers, Bears, Jets, and Cowboys are ecstatic with their draft as they've had multiple risers. You can see on this chart how big some of the risers were. Lots of green and not much red. makes you think it was pretty good, but only because most of the players fell past that 32 mark, meaning there'd likely be a lot more red than you see. Interestingly enough, the historic 15 Bulldogs taken in this draft were not the highlights of the draft. Trayvon Walker fell hard, while Quay and Lewis Seen fell out of the first round in this redraft. Davis also fell, but Pickens and Wyatt rose to kind of replace him, although they only rose slightly. All in all, outside of those 5 first rounders mentioned, only James Cook would have moved up my board. So essentially, in my opinion, 12 of 15 Bulldogs didn't turn out like the NFL was hoping. However, regardless, those players still played impactful roles at the University of Georgia, helping them carve out a back-to-back national championship run. Thank you for watching Peach State Sports. If you would like to see another one of these, let me know down below. Also, like and subscribe, and if you have a second, watch some of my reels. I'll also see you next time.